5 years ago, the sand was the color of old blood. Kira Ashford crouched behind the shattered wall of what used to be a schoolhouse, her hands slick with someone else's blood. Not hers. Never hers. The wolfless didn't get the privilege of healing fast enough to bleed out and survive. Every wound was a death sentence in this desert hell, and she'd learned to keep her skin intact through pure competence and paranoia. The wounded soldier at her feet was neither competent nor paranoid. He was 23, fresh from basic, and he'd taken shrapnel to the femoral artery because he'd stood up when he should have stayed down. Now he was dying, and Kira was the only thing between him and the statistics that would make his mother cry in a kitchen somewhere in Ohio. Her fingers found the spurting artery. Pressure, direct and unrelenting. The kid's eyes rolled back, shock setting in fast. "Stay with me," she thought, but didn't say. Talking wasted oxygen they both needed. The compound was still hot. Gunfire rattled from the north wing where the rest of her unit was pinned down. She could hear Marcus's voice over the radio, calm and tactical, calling for air support that wouldn't arrive for another 8 minutes. 8 minutes was a lifetime in combat. 8 minutes was long enough to bleed out twice over. She worked fast. Tourniquet from her pack, wrapped high and tight. The kid whimpered, which meant he was still conscious enough to feel pain. Good. Pain meant alive. 3 more wounded were scattered across the courtyard. She could see them through the gap in the wall. One was moving, trying to crawl toward cover. The other 2 were still. Too still. Kira made the calculation in half a heartbeat. Moving meant leaving this kid. Staying meant the crawler might not make it. There was no right answer in war, only the least wrong one. She chose to move. The courtyard was 30 feet of open ground under a sun that turned everything into wavering heat ghosts. Kira kept low, medic bag bouncing against her hip, boots finding purchase in sand and rubble. The crawler was a woman, mid-30s, pack enforcer built like a brick wall. Now she was dragging herself forward with her arms because her legs didn't work anymore. Kira reached her in 15 seconds that felt like 15 hours. Rolled her over. Spinal injury maybe, or nerve damage from the blast. The woman's eyes were wide and terrified in a way that combat veterans' eyes shouldn't be. "Can't feel my legs," the woman whispered. "Doc, I can't feel anything." Kira's hands moved over her, checking, assessing. No external bleeding. Pupils responsive. Breathing labored but steady. She pulled a syringe of morphine from her kit, jabbed it into the woman's thigh. "You're going to be fine," Kira lied. Because sometimes lies were the only medicine that mattered. "Medevac's coming. Stay still." The woman grabbed her wrist. Her grip was strong despite everything. "You're wolfless. How are you even here?" The question had been asked before, would be asked again. Kira had stopped trying to explain that being wolfless didn't mean being useless. She just worked harder, trained longer, proved herself in blood and sand until no one questioned her right to be here. She pulled her wrist free gently, because someone has to be. The explosion that followed wasn't close enough to kill her, but close enough to throw her sideways into the wall. Ears ringing, vision swimming, dust and smoke turning the world into a gray hell. When she could see again, Marcus was there, standing over her like some kind of action movie hero, rifle up, scanning for targets. He was everything she wasn't, wolf strong, pack bonded, born for this. He pulled her to her feet with one hand. "You good?" She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. Her ears were still ringing, high-pitched whine that meant temporary hearing damage. She'd had it before. It would fade. Marcus keyed his radio. "All units, pull back to Rally Point 2. We've got wounded that need evac now." That night, after the helicopters had taken the wounded and the dead, after the adrenaline had burned off and left only exhaustion, Marcus found her sitting alone on the roof of their barracks. The stars in this country were different from home, brighter, colder, indifferent to the violence that played out beneath them. He sat down beside her without asking permission. For a while, neither of them spoke. Combat did that sometimes, stripped away the need for words, because everything worth saying had already been said in the ways that mattered. In the covering fire, the pulled trigger, the tourniquets applied under fire. "You saved Daniels today," Marcus said finally. "The kid with the femoral bleed. Surgeon said another 30 seconds and he'd have been gone." Kira didn't respond. Saving lives was her job. She didn't need praise for doing what she was trained to do. Marcus turned to look at her. Really look at her. In a way he hadn't before. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of it. "I've been watching you," he said. 3 months we've been deployed together, and I've watched you work. You don't have a wolf, but you have something else. Something I can't name." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand settled on her shoulder, warm and solid. "I feel it," he said quietly, "when you're near. Like a pull, like gravity." That was how it started. Not with fireworks or destiny. Just 2 soldiers in a war zone, finding something human in the middle of inhuman circumstances. The mate bond formed slowly over the next 6 months, a thread between them that grew stronger with every shared danger, every quiet conversation, every moment of trust built under fire. Kira had never believed in mate bonds, thought they were something that happened to other people, people with wolves, people who belonged. But Marcus saw her anyway, chose her anyway. For 3 years that was enough. The present tasted like betrayal and antiseptic. Kira sat in a hearing room that was designed to intimidate. Long table at the front where 5 officers sat in their dress uniforms, medals catching the fluorescent light. Flags behind them, American and the territorial pack standard. Everything official and cold and final. She wore her own dress uniform, but it felt like a costume now, like she was playing soldier instead of being one. General Marcus Brennan sat at the far end of the officers' table, not making eye contact. He'd stopped making eye contact 3 weeks ago when he'd filed the paperwork that led to this moment. The chairwoman of this board was a civilian, Counselor Vivian Cross, sharp-eyed and sharper-minded, representing the Government Oversight Committee. She looked at Kira with the kind of clinical detachment usually reserved for lab specimens. "Captain Ashford," Vivian began, reading from a file that was thicker than it should be. "You've served with distinction for 8 years, 2 combat tours, 17 lives saved under fire. Commendations for valor and medical excellence." Kira said nothing. The butt was coming. She could feel it like an incoming mortar round. "However," Vivian continued, turning a page, "recent psychological evaluations raise concerns about your fitness for continued service. Specifically, incidents of dissociation, emotional instability, and what your commanding officer describes as unusually acute empathic responses to pack members in distress." The words were clinical. The reality had been messier. 3 weeks ago, during a routine training exercise, Kira had collapsed. No warning, no physical cause. She'd just been standing in formation one moment and on her knees the next, overwhelmed by a crushing wave of fear and pain that didn't belong to her. Later, they'd found out that one of the recruits 20 feet away had been having a panic attack. Silent, internal. The kind of breakdown that happened inside where no one could see. Except Kira had seen it, felt it, been buried under it like an avalanche. They'd called it a psychotic break. Put her on medical leave, started asking questions about her family history, her mother's death, her father's disappearance. Started looking at her like she was broken instead of capable. "General Brennan," Vivian said, turning to Marcus, "you've submitted testimony regarding Captain Ashford's psychological state. Would you like to speak to the board?" Marcus finally looked at her. His expression was carefully neutral, but she knew him well enough to see the calculation behind it. He'd made a choice, and it wasn't her. "Captain Ashford is a dedicated soldier," he said, voice carrying the weight of command. "But her recent episodes suggest an underlying instability that makes her a liability in combat situations. For her safety and the safety of her unit, I recommend medical discharge with full honors." The words hit like rounds to center mass. Kira's hands curled into fists under the table where no one could see. She wanted to scream, to argue, to demand he look her in the eye and explain how 3 years of shared history could be erased by 3 weeks of fear. But this was a hearing, not a trial. The verdict had been decided before she'd walked through the door. This was just theater, making it official. "Do you have anything to say, Captain?" Vivian asked, almost gently. Kira met Marcus's eyes across the room, held his gaze until he looked away. "No, ma'am," she said. Her voice was steady. She'd learned in combat how to function when everything inside was screaming. This was just another kind of battlefield. Vivian closed the file. "Then this board recommends medical discharge effective immediately. Captain Ashford will be remanded to the Northern Territory for psychological evaluation under the authority of Alpha King Dominic Thorne. Transportation will be arranged." Kira's pulse spiked. Northern Territory, Dominic Thorne. Everyone knew the name. The Alpha King who'd held the northern border for 30 years. The tactical genius who'd won wars through strategy instead of brute force. The widower who'd withdrawn from politics after his mate's assassination, only to return harder and colder than before. "Why the Northern Territory?" Kira asked, breaking protocol. "This is a medical discharge, not a transfer." Vivian exchanged a glance with one of the other board members. "Your father's file contains irregularities that require investigation. Alpha King Thorne has expertise in certain classified matters. You'll be in good hands." The way she said it made Kira's skin crawl. The medication started that night. They called it a sedative. Something to help with the anxiety, the instability. Kira recognized the bitter taste under the coating. Not a sedative, a suppressant. The kind of drug used on wolves whose animals were too aggressive, too dominant, too hard to control. She was wolfless. She had nothing to suppress. She took the pills anyway because refusal would mean forced administration. Because she needed to be conscious and aware for whatever was coming next. Because in her experience, the best way to survive was to look compliant while planning escape routes. The pills made everything soft around the edges, muted, like watching the world through frosted glass. 3 days later, they transported her north. The hearing room for the official transfer was smaller than the discharge board. Just Vivian, 2 guards, and a video camera recording everything for the official record. Kira sat in a chair that was bolted to the floor. Her hands weren't restrained, but the guards flanking the door carried weapons, just in case. Vivian sat across from her, tablet in hand, reading through documents with the focused attention of someone checking boxes on a list. "Your father," she said without preamble, was Kieran Ashford. Former military, served 2 tours in Vietnam, received medical discharge for psychological trauma in 1978. Disappeared in 1997 under suspicious circumstances. Kira knew the story. Had grown up with the gaps where her father should have been. Mom had said he left because the war never really ended for some men. That he'd needed to find peace somewhere they couldn't follow. Kira had been 3 when he disappeared. Old enough to remember a tall man with kind eyes. Not old enough to understand why kind men left. "What you don't know," Vivian continued, "is that your father was flagged by military intelligence in 1995. There were reports of unusual psychological influence over his unit. Men following orders they later couldn't explain. Loyalty beyond normal pack bonds. The room was getting smaller, or maybe that was the drugs. Your mother," Vivian said, turning to another file, "died in a car accident in 2019. Single vehicle collision, no witnesses. Investigation concluded driver error." Kira's throat tightened. She didn't want to hear where this was going. "Except," Vivian said softly, "there were anomalies. Brake lines showed signs of tampering. Toxicology found traces of a sedative in her system. The investigation was closed by order of someone with enough clearance to make evidence disappear." "Why are you telling me this?" Kira's voice came out rougher than intended. Vivian set down the tablet, looked at her with something that might have been sympathy or might have been calculation. It was hard to tell through the drug haze. "Because you need to understand what you are," she said. "And because Dominic Thorne is one of 3 people in this country who knows the truth about Bloodborne genetics. The word hit like a physical blow. Bloodborne. Kira had heard the stories. Everyone had. Wolves with the ability to sense and influence pack bonds. Psychological warfare specialists turned weapons turned monsters. The last one had been executed 300 years ago after she'd claimed an entire territory and ruled it like a tyrant queen. They were myths, propaganda, stories to scare children, except Vivian was looking at her like she was one. "I'm not," Kira said. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs. "I don't have a wolf. I can't be bloodborne." Vivian reached into her briefcase and pulled out a medical file, opened it to a page marked with yellow tabs. "Your recent episode during training," she said. "You described it as feeling someone else's panic attack, experiencing their fear as if it were your own." Kira said nothing. "That's not psychosis," Vivian continued. "That's empathic resonance, the first sign of bloodborne manifestation, usually triggered by extreme stress or trauma." She pulled out another document. This one was older, yellowed at the edges. "Your father exhibited the same symptoms in 1995. That's why he ran. Someone was trying to weaponize him, and he knew if they succeeded, they'd come for his children next." The room tilted. Kira gripped the edge of the table. "Your mother was killed because she wouldn't tell them where he went," Vivian said. "And you were left alone because you showed no signs of manifestation until 3 weeks ago." Kira's pulse was hammering in her ears. The medications made it hard to think, but even through the chemical fog, the implications were clear. She was a weapon someone wanted to use, and Marcus had delivered her. "Did he know?" she whispered. Vivian's expression softened slightly. "No, he was a useful idiot. Ambitious men are easy to manipulate. We simply suggested that a wolfless mate was holding him back politically, and his ego did the rest. The betrayal wasn't even personal. That somehow made it worse. The manifestation happened during transport. They were loading her into an armored vehicle when the world suddenly expanded. One moment, Kira was aware of herself, her body, her breathing, her racing heart. The next moment, she was aware of everything. The guard to her left, nervous about his daughter's surgery tomorrow. The driver, hungover and trying to hide it. Vivian in the building behind them, satisfaction and concern warring in her chest. Marcus somewhere across the base, guilt he refused to acknowledge eating at him like acid. And further out, like ripples in a pond, hundreds more. Thousands. Every wolf within a half-mile radius, their emotions battering against her like waves against a seawall. Fear, anger, love, boredom, pain, hunger, joy. All of it at once. All of it hers and not hers. Kira's knees buckled. She hit the pavement hard, hands scraping against concrete. The world was spinning, or she was spinning, or everything was spinning, and there was no up or down anymore. Someone was shouting. The guards, maybe. Or Vivian. It was hard to tell when every voice felt like it was inside her skull. Her vision went white, then gold. When she came back to herself, she was on the ground and there was blood on her lip. Someone had hit her, or she'd bitten through it during the seizure. The taste was copper and salt and wrong. The guards were on their knees. Both of them. Not restrained, just kneeling like they'd been commanded by something greater than military authority. Vivian stood in the doorway of the building, one hand pressed to her chest, breathing hard like she'd just run a marathon. And on every screen, every camera, every device within range, the same message was broadcasting. Manifestation confirmed. Subject Kira Ashford. Bloodborne classification alpha level. Recommend immediate containment. Somewhere far away, in a fortress built into the northern mountains, Dominic Thorne watched the feed and smiled. Exactly as predicted, he said to the man standing beside him. Marcus played his part perfectly. Cole Harrison, his second in command, frowned at the screen. She looks terrified. She should be. Dominic's voice was quiet. She just discovered she's the thing everyone's been taught to fear. He leaned forward, studying Kira's face on the monitor. The gold had faded from her eyes, but the fear remained. "Prepare the extraction team," he said. "Full tactical gear. She's going to run, and when she does, I want us there first." Cole hesitated. "Sir, with respect, what if she's dangerous?" Dominic's smile was cold. "She's absolutely dangerous. That's why we need her." The extraction came at dawn. Kira had been locked in a holding cell overnight. Not a prison exactly, more like a hospital room with reinforced doors and cameras in every corner. They'd given her more medication, stronger this time, enough to make her limbs heavy and her thoughts slow, but not enough to stop her from feeling. Even drugged, even contained, she could sense them. The guards outside her door, the medical staff 3 floors down, the wolves patrolling the perimeter. She knew when they changed shifts, knew when someone was tired or angry or afraid, knew things she had no right to know about people she'd never met. It was violating, being inside their emotional space without permission, feeling their lives like phantom limbs she couldn't amputate. The explosion that took out the west wall was controlled, precise. The kind of demolition work that spoke of professional operators who knew exactly how much force was needed to breach without bringing down the entire structure. Kira was on her feet before the smoke cleared, instinct overriding sedation, combat training kicking in even when her conscious mind was still catching up. The door to her cell opened, not blown open, just unlocked from the outside and pushed open by a man in full tactical gear. Black fatigues, plate carrier, rifle held in a way that spoke of thousands of hours of training. His face was covered by a balaclava, but his eyes were visible, dark brown and calm. He looked at her for a moment, some kind of assessment happening behind those calm eyes. Then he lowered his rifle. "Kira Ashford," he said. His voice was rough, probably from years of shouting orders over gunfire. "My name is Cole Harrison. I'm here to take you somewhere safe." She almost laughed. Nothing about this was safe. "Who sent you?" "Alpha King Thorne." He gestured toward the hole in the wall where 2 more operators were providing security. "We don't have much time. You can come willingly or I can carry you. Your choice." Kira looked at the cell behind her, at the monitors and the medications and the future that waited if she stayed, being studied, used, turned into whatever weapon they thought she should be. Then she looked at Cole, at the tactical efficiency and the calm competence and the offered choice. She chose to walk. The extraction was textbook. Cole's team moved like water, flowing around obstacles, covering angles, communicating in hand signals and clipped radio calls. There were 6 of them total. Cole in command, calling plays like a quarterback who'd run this route 1,000 times. Kira was placed in the middle of their formation, protected without being restrained. They moved fast, but not reckless, through corridors that should have been guarded but weren't, past security systems that should have stopped them but didn't. Someone had planned this down to the second. They exited through a vehicle bay where a nondescript panel van waited, engine running. One operator slid into the driver's seat. Another took the passenger side, rifle ready. Cole opened the back door and gestured for Kira to climb in. She hesitated at the threshold. "Where are you taking me?" "North," Cole said. "That's all you need to know right now." One of the other operators, a woman built like she could bench press a truck, spoke up without taking her eyes off her sector. "Ma'am, we're on a timeline. Get in the van." The tone was respectful but firm, not a request. Kira climbed in. Cole followed, pulling the door shut behind them. The van was already moving before the door latched. Inside, the cargo area had been converted into a mobile operations center, monitors showing tactical feeds, radio equipment, medical supplies, everything bolted down and organized with military precision. Cole pulled off his balaclava. His face was weathered, mid-40s, with scars that told stories he probably wouldn't share, but his eyes were kind despite the hardness. "You're going to have questions," he said, settling into a seat across from her. "I'll answer what I can. But first, Doc needs to check you over." One of the other operators moved back from the front, pulled off his own mask to reveal a face that was Latino, handsome in a tired kind of way, with the focused attention of someone who'd spent years keeping people alive. "Marcus Rivera," he said by way of introduction. "Everyone calls me Doc. I'm going to check your vitals, make sure whatever they gave you isn't going to kill you. That okay?" Kira nodded, watching as he pulled out a medical kit that was better stocked than most field hospitals. Doc worked efficiently. Blood pressure cuff, pen light to check pupil response, fingers gentle on her wrist taking her pulse. Heart rates elevated. he said, more to himself than to her, but that's to be expected given the circumstances. He pulled out a small device that looked like a glucose monitor. This is going to prick your finger. Need to check what's in your system. The prick was quick. The readout took longer. Doc's expression darkened as he read the results. They had you on suppressants. Heavy-duty ones. The kind we use for wolves who've lost control of their animals. Cole leaned forward. How heavy? Enough to kill a normal wolf, Doc said quietly. She shouldn't be conscious right now, let alone walking. All eyes turned to Kira. She met their gazes, too tired to be afraid. I'm wolfless. Maybe that makes a difference. Doc and Cole exchanged a look that carried a conversation she wasn't part of. Maybe, Cole said finally. Or maybe you're tougher than they gave you credit for. The van drove for 6 hours. They stopped once, switching vehicles in a parking garage that had been cleared in advance. Kira caught glimpses of the team's efficiency, the way they moved together like parts of a single organism, checking corners, watching angles, trusting each other absolutely. This was what pack was supposed to be. Not forced bonds or hierarchies, just people who'd earned each other's trust through shared danger and competence. The woman who'd told her to get in the van introduced herself during the vehicle switch. Sarah Brooks, call sign Hammer. Why Hammer? Kira asked. Because I like breaking things. Hammer grinned, and it was sharp and real, and because subtle was never my strong suit. The sniper, a quiet Asian man with eyes that missed nothing, nodded at her. James Chen. Ghost. Kira didn't ask about his call sign, she could guess. The last member of the team was built like a bear, huge shoulders, hands that could palm a basketball. He grunted something that might have been a name. Thomas Kowalski, Cole translated. We call him Bear. He's not much for conversation, but he's the best heavy weapons specialist in the territory. Bear nodded once, then went back to cleaning his rifle with the kind of care most people reserved for beloved pets. These were Cole's people, his team, and watching them work together, Kira felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Safe. The Northern Territory fortress appeared out of the mountains like something from another era. Not a castle, a military installation that had been built and rebuilt over decades, until it was less a single structure and more a complex of interlocking defensive positions, concrete bunkers, guard towers, perimeter fencing that hummed with electricity, and everywhere wolves, patrolling, training, watching. This wasn't a palace. It was a forward operating base built by someone who understood that the best defense was layers of prepared killing zones. The van passed through 3 checkpoints before reaching the inner compound. Each time the guards recognized Cole and waved them through without question. Each time Kira felt the weight of their attention on her, curiosity mixed with wariness. They knew what she was, or what she might be. Cole led her through corridors that reminded her of every military base she'd ever served on. Utilitarian, efficient, everything designed for function over form. They passed training rooms where wolves sparred, armories stocked with enough weapons to outfit a small army, a medical bay that looked better equipped than most civilian hospitals, and finally a briefing room. It was large enough for maybe 20 people. Maps covered the walls showing territorial boundaries, force deployments, threat assessments. A conference table dominated the center. Monitors at one end displayed tactical feeds from what looked like a dozen different locations. A man stood at the head of the table, studying a map with the focused intensity of someone planning a campaign. He was tall, broader through the shoulders than most wolves she'd met. His hair was silver at the temples, dark everywhere else. Lines around his eyes and mouth that came from years of command decisions and hard living. When he turned to face her, Kira felt the impact like a physical thing. Silver eyes, sharp and cold and calculating. This was Dominic Thorne, the Alpha King, and he was looking at her like she was a problem he intended to solve. Ms. Ashford, he said. His voice was deep, controlled, the kind of calm that came from decades of command. Thank you for coming. Kira almost laughed. Coming implied choice. Your team didn't give me much option. Dominic's expression didn't change. Cole, give us the room. Cole hesitated for just a second, then nodded and left, taking his team with him. The door closed with a finality that made Kira's pulse spike. She was alone with the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories, and he was watching her like a predator deciding if she was prey or competition. "You're afraid," Dominic observed. "That's smart. You should be." He moved around the table with the deliberate ease of someone confident in their ability to control any situation, gestured to a chair. "Sit." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. More like a suggestion backed by absolute authority. Kira sat, kept her hands visible on the table, watched him the way she'd learned to watch officers who held her life in their hands. Dominic took the chair across from her, close enough to be conversational, far enough to be professional. "Do you know what you are?" he asked. "According to Counselor Cross, I'm Bloodborne. According to medical science and 200 years of classified research, yes." He pulled a tablet from the table and turned it to face her. "You have the genetic markers. Your father had them. Your mother was a carrier. The probability of manifestation was always high. It just took the right trigger." The screen showed DNA sequences, medical charts, things Kira's medic training let her half understand. "Trauma," he continued. "Extreme emotional stress, rejection by a mate bond. Any of those could have done it." General Brennan was kind enough to provide all three. The cold way he said it made her stomach turn. "You've been watching me for 5 years, since Marcus first reported unusual empathic responses during your second deployment." He leaned back, silver eyes never leaving her face. "You saved a packmate who was having a silent panic attack 300 yards away. You knew exactly where to find her, even though there was no external indication of distress." Kira remembered that. The overwhelming certainty that someone needed help. The way her feet had carried her to the right tent without conscious thought. She'd thought it was intuition, combat awareness, the kind of sixth sense good soldiers developed. "That was your gift manifesting," Dominic said. "Empathic resonance, the ability to sense emotional states in others, the foundation of Bloodborne abilities." He stood, moving to one of the maps on the wall, traced a line along the northern border. 300 years ago, the last Bloodborne nearly destroyed our entire society. She could sense pack bonds, and with enough focus, she could influence them, claim wolves who weren't hers, build an army bound to her will alone. He turned back to face her. "The council executed her and banned Bloodborne genetics from the population. Or tried to. Turns out you can't just eliminate a trait through force of law. It pops up, rare but persistent." "What happened to the others?" Kira asked, though she already knew. "Executed," Dominic said simply. "Usually within days of manifestation. The council doesn't take chances." "Then why am I still alive?" "Because I convinced them you were worth more alive than dead." He moved back to the table, sat down again. "And because your father asked me to protect you." The world tilted. "My father?" Dominic pulled out a phone, tapped something on the screen, turned it to face her. It was a video, low quality, like it had been recorded on a secure line. The face on the screen was older than the man in Kira's childhood memories, but the eyes were the same, kind and haunted and familiar. Kieran Ashford looked into the camera and spoke. "If you're watching this, it means she manifested." His voice cracked slightly. "God, I hoped she wouldn't. That maybe she'd be spared." He took a breath, steadied himself. "Dominic, you promised me if this happened, you'd keep her safe. Not lock her up. Not use her. Keep her safe." The video ended. Kira's throat was tight. "That was recorded 6 months ago?" "Yes," Dominic said. "Your father contacted me through back channels, said he'd been tracking council intelligence, knew they were close to identifying you. He wanted assurances." "Where is he?" "Off-grid. Building something." He paused. "A community for wolves who can't or won't function in traditional pack structures. He calls it the Unbound." Kira's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. "And you? What do you want from me?" Dominic met her eyes. Silver on brown. Predator and prey. Or maybe something more complicated. "I want to offer you a choice," he said. "Something no one else will." He slid a paper across the table. "Contract language. Military precision. 4-year term of service. You train with my tactical teams. Learn to control your abilities, serve as an asset for crisis negotiation, intelligence gathering, counterinsurgency operations, full rank, full benefits, full respect. And after 4 years, you're free to leave. Re-up if you want, walk away if you don't, no strings. Kira looked at the contract, at the clean, clear language that spelled out exactly what was expected. No hidden clauses, no vague promises. And if I refuse? Dominic's expression didn't change. The council votes in 72 hours. I'll lose that vote 8-5. You'll be executed humanely, and I'll write a very sincere letter of condolence to your father. The honesty was almost worse than a threat. You're giving me the choice between servitude and death. Number. Dominic leaned forward. I'm giving you the choice between purpose and waste. You're a soldier, Kira. You've spent your whole life proving you belong in combat despite being wolfless. Now you have abilities that could save lives, prevent wars, protect people who can't protect themselves. He gestured at the maps on the walls. Or you can die. And all that potential dies with you, and the world keeps turning and no one benefits from what you could have been. It was brutal logic, military thinking at its most efficient. And it was exactly the kind of reasoning that made sense to someone who'd spent 8 years learning to function in impossible situations. Kira picked up the pen. Read it first, Dominic said. I won't have you claim later that you didn't understand the terms. So she read. Every word, every clause, the obligations and the protections, the expectations and the exit strategy. It was fair, more than fair, which made her suspicious. Why? She asked, setting down the pen without signing. Why do this? You could just force me, lock me up, train me under duress. Why offer a contract? Because forced loyalty is worthless, Dominic said. And because I've made enough enemies in my life. I don't need to create more by turning someone with your potential into one. He stood, walked to the window overlooking the training grounds. I'm old, Kira. 52, which is ancient by Alpha standards. I've been holding this territory together through sheer stubbornness and tactical superiority for 30 years. But eventually, I'll age out or die, and someone else will take over. He turned to look at her. I'd prefer that someone to be competent, principled, and strong enough to hold the line against the kind of political animals who'd turn you into a weapon. If I train you right, you might be that person. Or you might decide you want nothing to do with leadership. Either way, you'll have the skills to survive. It was the most honest recruitment pitch Kira had ever heard. She signed the contract. Training started the next morning at 5 a.m. Cole met her outside her quarters, which were in the Tier 2 housing section. Not luxurious, but comfortable. Single room with attached bathroom, window that overlooked the mountains, door that locked from the inside. The message was clear. She wasn't a prisoner. She was personnel. Cole handed her a uniform. BDUS in the Northern Territory colors, boots that actually fit, tactical vest rated for small arms fire. Get dressed, he said. We've got a lot of ground to cover. The team was waiting in the training yard. Hammer, Ghost, Bear, and Doc, all in full kit, ready to work. Cole gathered them in a rough circle. New mission, he said. Train Kira Ashford to function as a tactical asset. Timeline is aggressive. We've got 3 months before the council demands a demonstration of capability. Hammer raised an eyebrow. 3 months to turn a medic into an operator? She's already an operator, Cole corrected. We're just adding tools to her kit. The training was brutal, not because they were cruel, because they were thorough. Ghost taught her map reading, terrain analysis, how to read a battlefield from a distance and spot the patterns that meant ambush or opportunity. She learned to trust her empathic sensing, to use it to locate enemy positions by their emotional signatures. Hammer taught her small unit tactics, how to move in formation, how to clear rooms, how to think 3 steps ahead because in combat the soldier who hesitated was the soldier who died. Bear taught her weapons handling, not just rifles but the full spectrum, sidearms, shotguns, crew-served weapons, the mechanics of violence delivered with precision. Doc taught her trauma medicine beyond what she'd learned in the army, how to treat supernatural physiology, how to work on wolves whose healing factors complicated standard procedures. And Cole taught her leadership, how to make decisions under pressure, how to live with the consequences, how to carry the weight of command without letting it crush you. Between training sessions, Elena Hayes, the fortress psychologist, worked with her on managing empathic overload. Meditation techniques, grounding exercises, ways to filter the emotional noise without shutting down entirely. It's like learning to hear individual instruments in an orchestra, Elena explained during one session. Right now, all you hear is noise, but with practice, you'll be able to focus on single voices. Kira practiced, and slowly the chaos became manageable. 6 weeks into training, they gave her the first real test. Hostage situation at the southern border. Insurgent group, 8 to 12 fighters, holding 4 civilians and 2 children in a fortified compound. Demands included release of political prisoners and safe passage to neutral territory. Dominic assembled the response in the Tactical Operations Center, Cole's team plus Kira. Maps spread across the table showing the compound layout. Kira's role, Dominic said, tracing positions on the map, is intelligence gathering. We need to know how many fighters, their emotional state, and who's in command. She'll go in with Ghost for reconnaissance. Hammer frowned. Sir, she's not ready for field work. Dominic looked at Kira. Are you ready? Every instinct said no. 6 weeks wasn't enough time to prepare for combat operations. She was still learning to filter empathic input without getting overwhelmed. But she thought about the hostages, the children who were probably terrified, the civilians caught in politics they didn't understand. I'm ready, she said. Ghost met her eyes, gave the smallest nod of approval. The insertion was at dawn. Ghost and Kira moved through the tree line like shadows, staying low, using terrain to mask their approach. Kira's empathic sensing reached out ahead of them, feeling for emotional signatures. 8 contacts, she whispered into her radio. 7 tightly grouped, 1 isolated. The isolated one feels conflicted, afraid. That's our leader, Cole responded from the command position a quarter-mile back. Can you identify him? Kira closed her eyes, focused harder. Let the empathic sense sharpen. She felt through the emotional layers, fear, yes, but also protectiveness, desperation, and underneath it all, a name, an identity. David Morrison, former pack enforcer. Lost his family in a council raid 3 years ago. Copy that. Cole's voice was calm. Stand by. Ghost had his scope on the compound. Kira felt his absolute focus, the way a good sniper became one with their weapon. She used his calm as an anchor, the way Dominic had taught her. Then she did something that surprised them both. She reached out through the empathic connection and spoke directly to David Morrison's fear. Not words, just feeling, understanding, shared loss. The knowledge of what it meant to have everything taken by forces beyond your control. Inside the compound, David Morrison froze, looked around like he'd heard a voice he couldn't place. Kira took a breath and tried again, this time pushing a simple message through the empathic link. I understand, let's talk. Ghost's eye left the scope for just a second. He looked at her with something like awe. What did you just do? He whispered. I don't know, Kira admitted, but I think he heard me. 20 minutes later, David Morrison walked out of the compound, hands up, no weapons. Cole called the play over radio. Kira, you're up. Unarmed approach. We've got overwatch. Kira stood from cover, hands visible, heart hammering but stride steady. She walked into the open ground between the tree line and the compound. David Morrison watched her come, confusion and hope warring on his face. When she was 10 feet away, she stopped. My name is Kira Ashford. I'm not here to hurt you or your people. I just want to understand what you need. David's hands were shaking. How did you do that? In my head? Kira kept her voice gentle. I can feel what you're feeling. Your fear, your grief. The children in there are terrified, and you're trying to protect them, even though you know this can't end well. His face crumbled. I lost my daughter. She was 6. Council raid went wrong, and she was just collateral damage. I'm sorry, Kira said, and meant it. That shouldn't have happened. They won't even acknowledge it, won't investigate, won't hold anyone accountable. She took a careful step closer. You're right. The system is broken. But killing hostages won't fix it. It'll just create more grieving fathers. David looked back at the compound. at the impossible situation he'd created trying to force change. "What do I do?" he whispered. "Let them go. Surrender peacefully. And I promise you I will make sure your daughter's death is investigated, that someone answers for it." "You can't promise that." "No," Kira admitted, "but I can try, and trying is better than this." For a long moment, David Morrison stood on the knife edge of decision. Then he lowered his hands. The hostages walked out 30 minutes later, scared but unharmed. David and his people surrendered without resistance. No shots fired, no casualties. In the debriefing back at the fortress, Dominic studied the after-action report with the focused intensity of a chess master analyzing a game. "You negotiated a peaceful resolution to a situation that should have required a tactical breach," he said, "using abilities we barely understand in ways we haven't documented." Cole, standing beside Kira, spoke up. "She saved lives, sir. Civilian and insurgent, that's the mission." Dominic looked at Kira. "Did you claim him, David Morrison? Force his compliance?" "No, sir," Kira said. "I just showed him I understood. Gave him a choice that wasn't die or kill." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, small and sharp. "Good," he said, "because the council just issued a summons. Emergency session in 48 hours. General Brennan filed a formal complaint about your use in active operations. He's demanding your immediate execution." He set down the report. "Politics just got lethal," he said, "and we're about to find out if what you did today was enough to keep you alive." The council chamber was nothing like Kira had imagined. No throne room with dramatic lighting and ceremonial banners. Instead, it looked exactly like every government briefing room she'd ever sat through during her military career. Horseshoe-shaped table with microphones at each position. Flags representing the 13 territories mounted on the walls. Overhead lighting that was too bright and too clinical. Video cameras recording everything for the official record. 13 territorial alphas sat at that table. Men and women who'd earned their positions through a combination of political maneuvering, tactical excellence, and sometimes sheer survival. They ranged in age from mid-30s to late 60s. Every one of them looked at Kira like she was a problem requiring solution. She stood in the center of the horseshoe, Dominic beside her, Cole and his team positioned near the exits. Not as guards, as witnesses. The distinction mattered in council proceedings. General Marcus Brennan sat 3 seats to the left of center. He wouldn't look at her directly, but she could feel his attention anyway. The empathic sensing had grown sharper over the past 6 weeks. Now she could read emotional signatures with the same clarity most wolves read body language. Marcus felt vindicated, righteous, certain of his moral position. It made her sick. Councillor Vivian Cross called the session to order with 3 sharp raps of a gavel. Her expression was neutral, professional, giving nothing away about whose side she was on, or if she even had a side beyond political expediency. This emergency session has been called to address formal complaints filed by General Marcus Brennan regarding the unauthorized deployment of Bloodborne asset Kira Ashford in active tactical operations. General Brennan, you have the floor. Marcus stood. He'd worn his dress uniform, metals polished to a high shine, the image of military professionalism and righteous concern. He activated the room's display system. Video footage appeared on the screens mounted around the chamber. Kira recognized it immediately. Aerial surveillance from the hostage crisis. The footage showed her walking into the open ground, unarmed, approaching David Morrison. The council watched in silence as the scene played out. Her conversation with Morrison, his surrender, the peaceful resolution. When the video ended, Marcus turned to face the assembled alphas. "What you just witnessed appears to be successful negotiation," he began. His voice carried the weight of command, the practiced cadence of someone who'd given hundreds of briefings. But what the visual record doesn't show is psychological manipulation, mind control, the kind of abilities that the council banned 300 years ago for good reason. He pulled up another display. Medical readouts, brain scans, psychological evaluations of David Morrison taken after his surrender. The subject shows markers consistent with external influence on decision-making processes. elevated activity in the limbic system, disrupted neural patterns in the prefrontal cortex. His statement claims he felt a voice in his head, compelling him to surrender. Marcus let that hang in the air for a moment. This is exactly what we feared when we executed the last Bloodborne, the ability to override free will, to turn autonomous individuals into puppets. Ms. Ashford may have achieved a peaceful outcome in this single instance, but the precedent is unacceptable. He turned to look directly at Kira for the first time. She has the ability to claim wolves against their will, to rewrite pack bonds, to build an army of thralls who cannot resist her commands. The fact that she chose not to do so in one operation does not mitigate the existential threat she represents. Several alphas nodded. One, a weathered man in his 60s with the bearing of career military, spoke up. General Brennan raises valid concerns. The Supernatural Weapons Treaty of 1964 explicitly prohibits the development and deployment of psychological warfare assets. A Bloodborne falls under that category. Another alpha, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and sharper political instincts, leaned forward. However, the treaty also allows for classified programs under council oversight. If Ms. Ashford's abilities can be controlled and monitored, they represent a strategic asset we'd be foolish to waste. The debate continued. Technical arguments about treaty language and historical precedent, political posturing about territorial security versus civil liberties, all of it conducted with the careful formality of people who knew they were being recorded for posterity. Kira stood silent through it all. Dominic had coached her on council protocol. Don't speak unless addressed directly. Don't show emotion. Let them argue themselves into corners, then present facts when asked. After 30 minutes of circular debate, Vivian Cross rapped her gavel again. We're not here to retry 300 years of policy decisions. The question before this council is simple. Does Ms. Ashford represent an acceptable risk under controlled deployment, or must she be terminated as a threat to territorial stability? She turned to Dominic. Alpha King Thorne, you sponsored Ms. Ashford's contract. You deployed her in active operations. Defend your decision. Dominic stood. He didn't need notes or prepared remarks, just the calm authority of someone who'd been making life and death decisions since before half the council members were born. I deployed Kira Ashford because she saved lives, he said simply. 4 civilians, 2 children, and 8 insurgents who would have died in a tactical breach. She achieved this outcome without firing a single shot, without casualties on either side, and without claiming a single wolf against their will. He gestured to the medical reports Marcus had displayed. General Brennan shows you brain scans and calls it mind control. I show you the same data and see empathic communication. Ms. Ashford felt David Morrison's grief and reflected it back to him. She gave him understanding, not commands. The difference is crucial. Marcus interrupted. The outcome is the same. He surrendered against his stated intentions. No, Dominic said, voice hardening slightly. He surrendered because someone finally acknowledged his pain instead of dismissing it. That's not mind control. That's basic human decency amplified by supernatural ability. He pulled up his own data. Statistics, mission reports, tactical analyses. In the 6 weeks since Ms. Ashford joined my command, she has assisted in 7 crisis interventions. Pack disputes, PTSD cases, domestic violence situations. Every single resolution achieved without violence, without claims, without the tyranny you're all so afraid of. One of the more conservative alphas spoke up. 6 weeks is not sufficient time to assess long-term risk. The last Bloodborne operated benevolently for years before her corruption became apparent. Fair point, Dominic acknowledged, which is why I'm proposing continued oversight, monthly evaluations, civilian review committee with full access to operational records. Any indication of unauthorized claiming or psychological manipulation triggers immediate termination of contract. Vivian was watching him with calculating interest. You're proposing we legitimize a Bloodborne under regulatory framework. I'm proposing we use every tool available to protect our people, including tools that make us uncomfortable. Dominic's silver eyes swept the council. We face threats that don't care about our ideological purity. Insurgent groups, rogue packs, cross-border conflicts. Having someone who can resolve crises without bloodshed is a strategic advantage we cannot afford to waste. The debate shifted. Some alphas swayed by the practical argument. Others remained opposed on principle. The vote, when it finally came, was going to be close. Then Marcus played his trump card. "I have evidence," he announced, "that suggests Ms. Ashford's abilities are already beyond her control." He activated another video feed. This one showed Kira during her initial manifestation 6 weeks ago. The moment she'd collapsed during transport, overwhelmed by empathic overload. The guards dropping to their knees. The broadcast message about Bloodborne classification. The council chamber went very quiet. This, Marcus said, was not controlled deployment. This was loss of control. 2 trained soldiers compelled to kneel by nothing more than her proximity. She claimed them without conscious intent. Kira felt Dominic tense beside her. They'd known this would come up, had prepared for it. But seeing it played out in front of the council, the raw footage of her at her most vulnerable, was harder than she'd expected. Those guards, Dominic said carefully, were not claimed. They experienced a compulsion that lasted less than 30 seconds. Ms. Ashford was under the influence of heavy suppressant drugs and experiencing her first manifestation crisis. The fact that she regained control without permanent damage to those soldiers demonstrates restraint, not threat. Marcus shook his head. It demonstrates that under sufficient stress she loses control, and in combat, stress is a constant. He turned to address the full council. "I submit that Ms. Ashford requires containment, not deployment. Study her abilities under laboratory conditions. Develop countermeasures. But do not deploy her in active operations where loss of control could result in mass claiming events." The vote was deadlocked. 6 alphas voted for immediate execution. 6 voted for continued deployment under oversight. Vivian Cross, as civilian council representative, held the deciding vote. She took her time letting the silence stretch. Political theater at its finest. "I find myself sympathetic to both positions," she said finally. "General Brennan's concerns about control are valid. Alpha King Thorne's argument about strategic utility is compelling." She looked directly at Kira. "Therefore I propose a compromise, a trial by fire, if you will." The room waited. "We have a developing crisis on our northern border," Vivian continued. "Voidwalker movement. 200+ fighters demanding abolishment of the pack bond system. They've hit 3 supply convoys, 12 casualties. Diplomatic efforts have failed." She pulled up intelligence reports. Satellite imagery showing force concentrations, threat assessments, casualty projections if the situation escalated to full conflict. "I propose we deploy Ms. Ashford to negotiate. If she can achieve peaceful resolution without claiming a single Voidwalker, she demonstrates the control and restraint necessary for continued operations. If she fails, or if she claims anyone, the execution order stands. Immediate. No appeals." Kira's stomach dropped. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he didn't object. Couldn't object. This was the kind of political compromise that sounded reasonable on paper, but was designed to be nearly impossible in practice. "The Voidwalkers hate pack bonds," Marcus said slowly. "They'd rather die than submit to Bloodborne claiming. Sending her is sending her to fail." "Exactly," Vivian said with a thin smile. "If she's truly in control, truly capable of empathy without compulsion, this is her chance to prove it. If not, we've solved the problem with minimal political fallout." The vote on Vivian's compromise was unanimous. Even the alphas who'd voted for Kira's survival saw it as a reasonable test. Even Dominic had to acknowledge the political brilliance of it. Kira had 48 hours to prepare for a mission that would either prove her worth or end her life. The intelligence brief happened in Dominic's private tactical operations center. Just Cole's team, Dominic and Kira. The screen showed everything Northern Territory intelligence had gathered on the Voidwalker movement. Their leader was Rhea Kane, 47 years old, 25-year military career before going AWOL. The official record said dishonorable discharge for insubordination. The classified record told a different story. Sexual assault by her commanding officer. She'd reported it through proper channels. The command had buried it. When she'd pressed the issue, they'd threatened her with court-martial for making false accusations, so she'd walked away in the middle of the night and never looked back. For 25 years, she'd been building something, a community of wolves who rejected pack bonds entirely. Not because they were antisocial or violent, because they'd been hurt by the system and couldn't trust it anymore. Veterans with PTSD who couldn't handle pack hierarchy. Abuse survivors. Wolves who were neurodivergent and struggled with enforced social structures. The Voidwalkers were a refuge for everyone the traditional pack system had failed, and now they were armed, organized, and demanding change at gunpoint. Their camp is here, Cole said, pointing to satellite imagery. Northern border, rough terrain, good defensive position. They've got sentries, patrol rotations, interlocking fields of fire. Whoever's running their security knows what they're doing. That would be Rhea, Ghost said quietly. Checked her service record. Marine Force Recon, 3 tours, Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars. She knows small unit tactics better than most of us. Hammer studied the topography. Approaching that position without being spotted is going to be interesting. That's why we're not trying to be subtle, Dominic said. Kira walks in openly. We provide overwatch from distance, but this is her show. Doc looked worried. Sir, with respect, sending her alone into a camp of 200+ hostile fighters is suicide. Not alone, Kira said quietly. All eyes turned to her. With Ghost, reconnaissance team. We approach openly, request parley, see if they're willing to talk. Cole considered it. 2-person team is less threatening than a full squad. Might work. Might get you both killed, Hammer pointed out. Yeah, Ghost said with a slight smile. Might. They spent the next 24 hours planning. Approach routes, fallback positions, communication protocols, contingency plans for everything from outright ambush to partial success to complete disaster. Elena worked with Kira on managing empathic overload in high-stress situations. How to filter 200 emotional signatures without getting overwhelmed. How to stay centered when surrounded by hostility and fear. It's like being in a crowded room, Elena explained. You can't listen to every conversation. You choose what to focus on. Same principle applies to emotional sensing. Kira practiced with volunteers from the fortress. 20 wolves in a room, all thinking of different things, feeling different emotions. She learned to narrow her focus, to pick out individual threads in the tapestry without losing awareness of the whole. It was exhausting, but it was necessary. The night before deployment, Dominic found her on the ramparts overlooking the training grounds. She'd taken to coming here when she needed to think. The elevation provided distance from the emotional noise of the fortress, made it easier to hear her own thoughts. Can't sleep? He asked, settling against the wall beside her. Kira shook her head. Tomorrow I walk into a camp of people who have every reason to hate what I am. If I survive, great. If not, at least the council gets their proof that Bloodbornes are too dangerous to live. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. Dominic was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Catherine, my mate, died because I kept her at a distance. Thought if I didn't involve her in politics, didn't bring her into the tactical side of leadership, she'd be safe. He stared out at the mountains, but Kira knew he was seeing something else. Someone else. Assassination attempt meant for me. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Took the blade because I'd never taught her how to see threats coming. Never included her in my security briefings because I wanted to protect her. His hands gripped the stone wall. I learned something from that. Protection through ignorance doesn't work. Safety comes from competence. From giving people the tools and training they need to survive. He turned to look at her. Tomorrow is dangerous. Might get you killed. But you're not going in ignorant. You've trained with the best team in the territory. You've proven you can handle yourself under pressure. And you'll have overwatch every step of the way. It's not the same as keeping you safe, but it's the best I can offer. Kira felt something shift between them. Not the artificial pull of a mate bond, Something more complicated. Respect, maybe. Trust. The beginning of something that might become partnership if they both survived long enough. "Thank you," she said, "for being honest, for giving me a choice." Dominic's expression softened. "Don't thank me yet. You might still die tomorrow." "Yeah," she agreed. "But at least I'll die trying something worth doing." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge over the mountains, and neither of them mentioned that this might be the last quiet moment they'd have. The insertion was at dawn. Ghost and Kira moved through the forest in companionable silence. He'd taught her how to read terrain, how to move without sound, how to be patient when every instinct said to rush. Now they practiced what he'd taught. The Void Walker sentries spotted them half a mile out. Kira felt them before she saw them. Heightened alertness, tactical focus, hands moving to weapons. But they didn't fire, just watched and reported. Ghost noticed her tension. "Talk to me." 6 sentries, positions marked on your HUD. They're watching but not engaging. Curious more than hostile. "Good," Ghost said. "Means someone trained them not to fire first." They reached the perimeter. A fallen log marked what Kira's empathic sense told her was the boundary. 3 wolves emerged from cover, weapons held in low, ready position. Professional. Controlled. The lead sentry was a woman, late 30s, with scars that told stories. "State your business." "We're here to speak with Rhea Kane," Kira said. "Just to talk." The sentry studied them, noted their lack of heavy weapons, the hands held visible and non-threatening. "Commander Kane doesn't meet with PAC representatives." "I'm not PAC," Kira said. "And neither is my partner. We're Northern Territory personnel, but we're not here to make threats, just to understand." The sentry's eyes narrowed. "You're her, the Bloodborne." Kira didn't flinch. "Yes." The sentry keyed her radio. "Commander, we've got the Bloodborne at the perimeter. She's requesting parley." A pause. Then a voice, rough and controlled. "Send her through, armed escort. And tell her if she tries anything, we'll put her down before she can blink." The Void Walker camp was organized like a forward operating base. Modular shelters arranged in defensive clusters, clear fields of fire, supply caches positioned for rapid distribution. Whoever designed this understood military logistics. Kira and Ghost were escorted through the camp by 6 fighters, 3 ahead and 3 behind. Professional security protocol. Kira felt the emotional atmosphere shift as they passed. Curiosity, wariness, old pain bubbling under the surface. These wolves had been hurt by PAC systems. Every single one of them carried trauma that made trust nearly impossible. Rhea Kane waited in what passed for a command tent. Tall, weathered, with eyes that had seen too much and survived anyway. She wore BDS that had been patched and repaired countless times. No rank insignia, no decorations, just function. "The Bloodborne," Rhea said. "Come to claim us all?" Kira met her eyes. "I'm here because the council sent me, but I'm here on my own terms, to talk, not to fight." Rhea gestured to a camp chair. "Sit. Your sniper friend stays outside." Ghost nodded once and stepped out. Kira felt his calm presence just beyond the tent wall, ready but not aggressive. Kira sat. Rhea remained standing. Dominant position, psychological advantage, old military tactics. "You know who I am," Rhea said, "what I did, why I left." "I read the classified files," Kira admitted. "What was done to you was wrong. The cover-up was worse." Rhea's expression didn't change. "And now they send you. Another weapon dressed up as solution, except you're worse than they are because you can make us want to comply. I didn't come here to claim anyone. That's what you say now. But we both know what you are, what you can do." Rhea crossed her arms. "Every wolf in this camp chose to be here rather than submit to PAC bonds, chose autonomy over belonging. You represent everything we've rejected." Kira took a careful breath. "I understand why you don't trust PAC structures. But what if the problem isn't connection itself? What if it's forced connection? Bonds made without consent?" Rhea's eyes hardened. "Pretty theory. Doesn't change the reality that every PAC bond is coerced. You're born into a PAC, you don't choose it, and if you try to leave, you're either executed or exiled." What if that could change? It can't. The system is built on forced loyalty. Tear that down and the whole structure collapses. Maybe it should collapse, Kira said quietly. Maybe we need something better. For the first time, something flickered in Ria's expression. Not agreement, but recognition that Kira wasn't just spouting political talking points. You say you can feel what we feel, Ria said. Prove it. Kira closed her eyes, extended her empathic sense carefully, respectfully, felt through the layers of Ria's emotional landscape. You're afraid, she said softly. Not of me specifically, of hope, because hope has burned you before. Every time you've trusted the system to change, it's betrayed you. So you built this instead, a place where trust isn't required because everyone's autonomy is absolute. She opened her eyes. But you're also lonely, because autonomy without connection is just another kind of prison. You want to believe things can be different, but you can't afford to be wrong. Ria's jaw tightened. Get out of my head. I'm not in your head. I'm listening to your heart, and it's breaking from the weight of 25 years of isolation. The silence stretched. Then the world exploded. The first explosion took out the eastern perimeter. Kira felt it before she heard it. Massive spike of fear and confusion from the Voidwalkers stationed there. Ghost burst through the tent flap. Contact! Multiple hostiles! 3 o'clock! Ria was already moving, grabbing weapons, issuing orders through her radio with the clipped precision of someone who'd commanded under fire countless times. Kira's empathic sense reached out, trying to map the attack. Not Voidwalkers. Different emotional signature. Military discipline. Professional aggression. And underneath it all, she felt something familiar. Marcus Brennan's satisfaction, his certainty that this would prove his point. He'd staged this, sent his own people to attack both sides, trigger a war that would justify Kira's execution. Ria! Kira shouted over the chaos. This isn't Northern Territory. Someone's trying to make us kill each other. Ria's eyes were hard. Convenient excuse. Check their IFF codes, Kira pressed. Those aren't Northern Territory frequencies. Another explosion. Closer this time. The tent shook. Ghost was on the radio. Cole, we've got multiple hostiles engaging Void Walker positions. I count at least 20 fighters, possibly more. Weapons signatures match Council stockpiles, not Northern Territory. Cole's response was immediate. Copy that. Moving our people into overwatch positions. Do not engage unless directly threatened. This is a setup. Ria made a decision in the space of a heartbeat. To her fighters, hold defensive positions, identify targets before engaging. To Kira and Ghost, you want to prove you're different? Help us stop this. Kira didn't hesitate. Ghost, can you locate their sniper positions? Already on it, Ghost said, moving to the tent entrance with his rifle. I count 4 elevated positions, transmitting coordinates to Cole. Kira reached out with her empathic sense, feeling for the attacking force. 23 fighters, all carrying the emotional signature of soldiers following orders they believed were righteous. They thought they were stopping a terrorist threat. Marcus had fed them lies, made them believe Kira had claimed the Voidwalkers, was building an army. She could claim them, right now. Override their will, force them to stand down. It would be easy, would save lives immediately. But it would also prove Marcus right. Prove that when pushed, she'd use her abilities to control others. Kira made a different choice. She opened a communication channel to Cole. I need you to patch me through to the attacking force's command frequency. Kira, that's not secure. I know. Do it anyway. A moment of static, then connection. Kira spoke. Her voice broadcast to every fighter currently attacking the camp. My name is Kira Ashford. I'm the Bloodborne you were sent to stop. But I haven't claimed anyone. The Voidwalkers are not under my control. You're being used to start a war that serves General Brennan's political agenda. Sniper fire answered her. A round punched through the tent 6 inches from her head. Ghost returned fire. Target suppressed. Kira tried again. I know you're following orders. I know you believe you're doing the right thing. But look at what you're shooting at. These are veterans. People who serve the same territories you're trying to protect. They're not terrorists. They're survivors who the system failed. She felt it then. Doubt. Not from all the attackers, but from some. Enough. Check your intel, she continued. Ask yourselves why General Brennan ordered this without council approval. Why he told you the Voidwalkers had been claimed when they're fighting back with everything they have. The firing slowed, not stopped, but hesitated. Rhea was watching her with calculating intensity. You're not claiming them. No, Kira said. I'm asking them to think. That won't be enough. Maybe not, but it's all I've got. Cole's voice came through the radio. Kira, we've got visual on Brennan. He's in a command vehicle 2 clicks south with a recording team. This whole thing is being documented. He wants evidence, Kira understood. Proof that she'd claimed the attackers to save herself. Then let's give him different evidence. She stood, walked to the tent entrance despite Ghost's protest, stepped into the open where every sniper could see her. I'm here, she called out. Unarmed, unclaimed. If you're going to execute me for being Bloodborne, do it now. But know that you're following illegal orders from an officer using you as political pawns. The camp went silent. 200 Voidwalkers watching. 23 attackers with weapons trained on her. Ghost and Cole's team in overwatch positions, ready to provide covering fire if this went wrong. For 10 seconds that felt like 10 years, nothing happened. Then one of the attackers lowered his weapon, keyed his radio. Command. This is Able Team Leader. Requesting clarification on mission parameters. Target is not behaving consistent with briefing intelligence. Marcus's voice tight with frustration. Able Team, you have your orders. Neutralize the Bloodborne threat. Sir, she's standing in the open. No hostile action. No indication of claimed assets. Voidwalkers are maintaining defensive positions, not engaging. Execute your orders, soldier! The Able Team leader looked at his squad. At Kira standing alone and unarmed. At the Voidwalkers who could have killed them all by now, but hadn't. He made his choice. Negative, Command. We're standing down pending council review of this operation. One by one, the other attack teams followed. Weapons lowered, positions held but no longer actively engaging. Marcus's fury was palpable even through the radio. This is mutiny. I will have every one of you court-martialed. Rhea stepped up beside Kira. And I'll testify at those proceedings. Explain how council forces attacked a peaceful camp without provocation. How the Bloodborne you're so afraid of talked your soldiers down instead of claiming them. She looked at Kira with something like respect. You could have controlled them, should have, tactically speaking. Would have been the smart play. Yeah, Kira agreed. But then I'd be exactly what everyone's afraid of. The aftermath took hours to sort out. Council investigators arrived to document everything. Cole's team provided testimony. The Voidwalkers gave statements. Marcus's attacking force confirmed they'd been operating on false intelligence. Marcus himself disappeared before council security could detain him. Warrants were issued. A manhunt began, but the damage to his political position was complete. Whatever influence he'd had on the council evaporated the moment his illegal operation became public record. Vivian Cross arrived personally to oversee the investigation. She found Kira and Rhea sitting together outside the command tent, exhausted but alive. You passed the test, Vivian said to Kira, though not the way I expected. Kira looked up at her. You expected me to claim them. I expected you to do whatever necessary to survive. That's what most people do. Vivian's expression was unreadable. Instead, you gambled your life on appealing to the better nature of soldiers following illegal orders. It worked, Kira pointed out. This time, Vivian agreed. Don't expect it to work every time. She turned to Rhea. Your people fought with discipline and restraint. If you're interested, the council is prepared to discuss formal recognition, territory status, representation. Rhea's expression was skeptical. With how many strings attached? Enough to make it meaningful. Not enough to make it slavery. Vivian pulled out a tablet. Preliminary terms. Your people can review before committing to anything. It was the kind of political compromise Vivian excelled at. Not perfect, but functional. Kira stood, her body aching from adrenaline crash. I need to report back to Dominic. Vivian nodded. The council will vote on your permanent status tomorrow. After today's demonstration, I expect a different outcome than before. As Kira walked back toward where Cole's team waited, Rhea called out, Ashford. Kira turned. Rhea's weathered face showed something that might have been the beginning of trust. 97 of my people want to accept the council's offer. Integration with Northern Territory, trial basis. And the rest? 153 want to stay independent, maintain autonomy. Kira nodded, both valid choices. Yeah, Rhea said. They are. Thanks for understanding that. The helicopter ride back to the fortress was quiet. Ghost sat across from Kira, cleaning his rifle with the meditative focus that came after combat operations. Cole was on the radio, coordinating with Dominic. Doc checked everyone's vitals, making sure the adrenaline crash wasn't hitting too hard. Hammer broke the silence. That was the ballsiest negotiation I've ever witnessed. Standing in the open, telling 20 armed hostiles to think for themselves. It was stupid, Ghost said, but effective. Kira managed a tired smile. I'll take stupid and effective over smart and dead. When they landed, Dominic was waiting on the pad. He didn't say anything, just pulled Kira into a brief, fierce embrace that surprised them both. When he stepped back, his silver eyes were bright with something that might have been relief or might have been pride. Don't ever do that again, he said. Stand unarmed in front of hostiles? Make me watch helpless while you gamble your life. Kira met his gaze. That's the job you recruited me for. Crisis negotiation through empathy. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Doesn't mean I have to like it. They walked together toward the fortress. Tomorrow would bring the council vote, political maneuvering, consequences for Marcus's actions. But tonight, they were both alive, and that was enough. The council vote happened in closed session, 13-0. Even the alphas who'd wanted her executed 3 days earlier voted in favor of permanent status. Kira stood in the observation room watching through reinforced glass as Vivian Cross made the announcement official. Felt the weight of it settle over her like a mantle she hadn't asked for but would carry anyway. Northern Territory's first official liaison officer. Bloodborne asset deployed under civilian oversight with full territorial authority to negotiate crises and heal broken pack bonds. It sounded impressive in the official language, felt like a target painted on her back. Dominic found her there an hour later, still watching the empty council chamber. You should be celebrating, he said, settling against the wall beside her. Should I? Kira didn't look away from the glass. They voted unanimously because I proved I could be useful, not because they stopped being afraid. Fear and respect aren't mutually exclusive. He was quiet for a moment. Most effective leaders inspire both. Is that what you do? Every day. Kira finally turned to face him. How do you carry it? The weight of everyone watching, waiting for you to either save them or become the thing they fear? Dominic's silver eyes were steady. I remember why I took the position in the first place. Not for power. For the people who need someone willing to make hard choices. He gestured toward the fortress beyond the windows. Every wolf out there is someone's son or daughter. Someone's mate or parent or friend. They trust me to keep them safe. To make decisions that serve their interests instead of my ego. That's not a burden. That's an honor. Even when they fear you? Especially then. Fear means they understand the responsibility. Respect means they believe I'll use it wisely. Kira absorbed that. The distinction between being feared as a threat versus feared as a force too important to misuse. Elena wants to see you tomorrow, Dominic continued. Full psychological evaluation for the official record. Vivian's oversight committee requires quarterly assessments. Kira nodded. She'd expected as much. The price of legitimacy was constant scrutiny. And after that, Dominic said, voice softer, I'd like you to join me for dinner. Not official business, just dinner. Kira felt something flutter in her chest. Not the artificial pull of a mate bond, something more complicated, more real. Is that appropriate, given the chain of command? Probably not, Dominic admitted. But I stopped caring about appropriate the day I decided to recruit you instead of executing you. He met her eyes. You're not my subordinate, Kira. You're my partner in this insane endeavor to prove Bloodbornes can be trusted. I'd like to get to know the person behind the abilities. It was the most vulnerable she'd seen him. This man who commanded territories and won wars through tactical brilliance, asking for something as simple as company over a meal. Okay, she said, dinner. His smile was small but genuine. 7 o'clock. My quarters. Fair warning, I cook about as well as I do politics. Functional but not elegant. I've eaten MREs for months at a time. I'm not picky. That night, Kira lay in her quarters staring at the ceiling. processing everything that had happened in the span of 8 weeks. From rejected mate to Bloodborne asset to territorial officer. From broken to dangerous to possibly, maybe, beginning to be whole. Her empathic sense reached out habitually now, monitoring the fortress's emotional landscape. She felt the Night Watch patrol's focused alertness, felt Doc in the medical bay, treating a training injury with patient competence, felt Hammer and Ghost playing cards in the rec room, their easy camaraderie a warm current in the darkness. And further away, in the command quarters, she felt Dominic, still awake, still carrying the weight of command even in the quiet hours. She felt his grief over Catherine, his determination to honor her memory by being better than he was, his carefully contained hope that maybe, possibly, he could allow himself to care again without it becoming a weapon against him. Kira pulled back from the sensing, respecting his privacy. But the knowledge settled in her chest. He was as alone as she was, as burdened by what he could do and what he'd lost. Maybe that was the foundation of real partnership, not shared strength, shared understanding of what strength cost. The dinner was exactly as promised. Functional but not elegant. Dominic's quarters were surprisingly sparse. Military efficiency extended to his personal space. A desk covered with tactical reports. Bookshelf filled with strategic theory and history. Small kitchen where he was currently attempting to cook something that smelled better than it probably had any right to. Kira settled at the small table watching him work. He moved in the kitchen with the same decisive confidence he brought to battle planning. No wasted motion, clear objective. "It's just pasta," he said without turning around. "But I make a decent sauce. You cook for yourself?" "When I have time. Most nights I eat in the mess with everyone else. But tonight," he glanced over his shoulder, "I wanted privacy." He brought 2 plates to the table, sat down across from her. For a moment they just looked at each other. No crisis to solve, no negotiations to conduct, just 2 people sharing a meal. "Tell me something," Dominic said. "Something that isn't in your military file or psychological evaluation." Kira thought about it. "I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was a kid, before I understood what being wolfless meant. Thought I could work with animals, help them heal." "What changed your mind?" "Reality," she said. "Veterinary school is expensive. Military offered training and purpose and a way to prove I wasn't useless." "You're not useless. I know that now. Took me 28 years and a Bloodborne manifestation to believe it." Dominic nodded slowly. "I wanted to be a teacher. History. Thought I could shape young minds, help them understand how the past informs the present." "What changed your mind?" "War," he said simply. "Lost my parents in a border conflict when I was 19. Joined the military to fight back. Discovered I was good at tactics, at leadership. Got promoted faster than I wanted." He took a bite of pasta, chewed thoughtfully. "By the time I was 30, I was Alpha King. By 40, I'd won 3 wars and lost my mate. By 50, I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be Dominic instead of the tactical asset everyone needed me to be." He met her eyes. "You remind me that there's a difference between what we can do and who we are." Kira felt the weight of that confession, the trust it represented. "I'm terrified," she admitted, "that I'll become what everyone fears, that the power will corrupt me the way it corrupted the last Bloodborne." "Then stay terrified," Dominic said. "The moment you stop being afraid of what you could become is the moment you'll actually become it." The meal continued. They talked about small things, books they'd read, places they'd served, memories that weren't tactical briefings or trauma. And slowly, carefully, something built between them. Not romance, not yet, but the foundation it might grow from. Respect earned through shared danger. Trust built on competence, understanding forged in the fire of impossible choices. When Kira left his quarters 3 hours later, she felt lighter, less alone, like maybe the weight she carried could be shared with someone who understood its measure. Dominic watched her go, then returned to his desk, pulled out a classified file he'd been avoiding. International Bloodborne Program, neighboring territory, gone active without oversight. He'd known this was coming, had been tracking the intelligence for months. Now it was time to brief Kira to prepare for the next crisis. But tonight, For just a few hours, he'd allowed himself to be something other than the Alpha King. He'd allowed himself to be a man who might be falling for a woman who understood his burdens because she carried her own. It complicated everything, made the tactical landscape infinitely more difficult to navigate. But it also made him feel alive in a way he hadn't since Catherine died. He'd deal with the complications tomorrow. Tonight, he'd just be grateful for the possibility. The meeting with Kira Ashford happened 2 days after the council voted unanimously to grant Kira permanent status as Northern Territory's first official liaison officer. Dominic arranged it at a neutral location, abandoned ranger station in the mountains, far from any territorial boundaries. Cole's team provided security, but at a distance. This was a family conversation. Kira's father looked older than his 68 years. Gray beard, weathered skin, but his eyes were still sharp, still haunted by things he'd seen and things he'd done. He stood when she approached, didn't try to embrace her, just looked at her like he was memorizing every detail. "You look like your mother," he said finally. Kira's throat was tight. "You left us." "I know." Kieran's voice was rough. "Thought it would keep you safe. Turned out I was wrong about a lot of things." Dominic stood nearby, giving them space but ready to intervene if needed. "Kira," Kieran said, "I need you to understand something. What happened to your mother? It wasn't an accident. They killed her trying to find me." "I know," Kira said. "Vivian Cross showed me the files." Kieran's expression darkened. "That woman is dangerous. Don't trust her." "She's a politician. I don't trust any of them." Kira crossed her arms. "But at least she's honest about her calculations." Kieran looked past her to Dominic. "You keeping her safe?" "As safe as anyone can be in her position," Dominic replied. "She's competent, trained, respected, and still a weapon everyone's afraid of." "Only if she chooses to be." Kieran shook his head. "You don't understand. I lived this. 25 years underground because I knew what would happen if they got their hands on me. If they could weaponize Bloodborne abilities, build an army of psychological warfare specialists." He looked at Kira. "Come with me, the unbound community. We have people like you, veterans who can't function in traditional structures. We've built something better." Kira felt the pull of it, the promise of belonging without judgment, a place where her abilities would be understood instead of feared. But she also felt the 118 wolves who'd chosen to join Northern Territory's pack. The cases she'd helped resolve, the lives saved through negotiation instead of violence. "I can't," she said. "There are people who need what I can do. Healing broken bonds, preventing wars, building something better from inside the system." Kieran's face fell. "Then you'll end up like me, running or dead." "Maybe," Kira acknowledged. "But I'd rather try to fix things than hide from them." The conversation lasted another hour, Kieran explaining the unbound community, Kira describing her work, neither fully understanding the other's choice, but beginning to respect it. When they parted, Kieran pulled her into a brief embrace. "If you ever need to disappear," he said quietly, "you know where to find me." "And if you ever want to stop running," Kira replied, "you know where to find me." They left it at that. On the helicopter ride back, Dominic was quiet, processing the conversation he'd witnessed. Finally, he spoke. "Your father's offer was genuine. You could have gone with him. Why didn't you?" Kira watched the mountains pass below. "Because running doesn't fix anything. And because there are people counting on me to show up." She looked at him. "Because someone once told me that protection through ignorance doesn't work. That safety comes from competence and training. I'm choosing to be competent." Dominic's expression softened. That someone sounds wise. He's tolerable. They flew in comfortable silence until Dominic's radio crackled to life. "Sir," Cole's voice, "we've got a situation. International incident. Bordering nation's Bloodborne program went active. Council is requesting your expertise." "And Kira's," Dominic guessed. "And Kira's," Cole confirmed. Dominic looked at her. "You up for another impossible mission?" Kira thought about everything that had happened in the past 2 months. The rejection that had freed her, the manifestation that had terrified her, the training that had prepared her, the negotiations that had proven her worth. She thought about Cole's team, Elena's therapy sessions, Ria's hard-won trust, about Dominic's partnership and her father's exile, about choosing competence over fear. "Yeah," she said, "I'm up for it." "Good," Dominic said, "because the world's not going to save itself. The helicopter banked toward the fortress, toward the next crisis, toward whatever challenges waited. Kira settled back in her seat and let herself feel the weight of it. The responsibility, the risk, the possibility that she might actually make a difference. It was terrifying. It was exactly what she'd signed up for. And for the first time since Marcus had rejected her, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The international crisis briefing happened at 0300 hours. Kira had been asleep for exactly 90 minutes when the alert came through. Not a drill, not a test. Real-world emergency requiring immediate response. She was dressed and in the Tactical Operations Center within 8 minutes. Cole's team was already there, looking alert despite the hour. Ghost studying satellite imagery, Hammer checking equipment manifests, Bear and Doc reviewing medical protocols for cross-border operations. Dominic stood at the head of the table, silver eyes sharp despite the late hour. Behind him, multiple screens showed intelligence feeds from the neighboring territory of Cascade Falls. "Welcome to the next impossible mission," he said as Kira entered. "Hope you got some sleep." "Enough," she lied. Dominic pulled up a map showing the border region between Northern Territory and Cascade Falls. A highlighted area pulsed red. 48 hours ago, Cascade Falls activated their classified Bloodborne program, Project Animus. They've been trying to recreate Bloodborne genetics for 30 years. Apparently they succeeded. He pulled up a photograph. A woman, mid-20s, with eyes that showed the telltale fractured pattern Kira recognized from her own reflection. Subject designation Maya Cross. Vivian Cross's niece, as it happens, manifested 3 weeks ago. Instead of bringing her to the Council for evaluation, Cascade Falls Command decided to fast-track her into active operations. "What kind of operations?" Kira asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Aggressive pack claiming." Dominic's voice was flat. "They sent her into disputed border territories with orders to claim every wolf she encountered. Build Cascade Falls an army of absolutely loyal troops before anyone could stop them." The screens showed tactical maps, red indicators spreading like infection across previously neutral zones. "Current count is 217 claimed wolves," Dominic continued. "Maya's under heavy sedation between operations. They're using her like a weapon, burning her out to grab territory while they can." Cole spoke up. "Cascade Falls Command knows this violates every treaty we have. They're gambling that by the time the Council responds, they'll have enough claimed territory to make conflict too costly." "So they're starting a war," Hammer said, "using a Bloodborne as the tip of the spear." Kira felt sick. This was exactly what everyone feared. What Marcus had warned about. A Bloodborne used as a weapon of conquest without consent or control. "What's our mission?" she asked. "Officially," Dominic said, "we're not authorized to cross the border. This is Cascade Falls' internal matter. The Council is still debating diplomatic options." "And unofficially?" "Unofficially, I've received a back-channel communication from someone inside Cascade Falls Command. They want Maya extracted before she dies or goes insane from the forced claiming. They're willing to provide intelligence and access if we can get her out." "That's treason," Ghost observed quietly. "That's conscience," Dominic corrected. "Someone over there realizes they've created a humanitarian disaster and wants it stopped before it gets worse." He looked at each team member in turn. "This is voluntary. If we cross that border without authorization, we're violating territorial sovereignty. The Council could disavow us. Cascade Falls could treat it as an act of war. We could start the very conflict we're trying to prevent." Bear grunted. "When do we leave?" 0500, Dominic said. 2 hours to prep. Ghost and Kira on point for infiltration. Rest of the team provides exfil support and covering fire if it goes loud. "What about me?" Kira asked. "If I'm there, if Maya senses another Bloodborne, it could trigger her defensive claiming." "That's why you're essential," Dominic said. "You're the only one who might be able to reach her. Show her there's another way. Talk her down before Cascade Falls Command burns her out completely." "Or she claims me in Cascade Falls gets 2 Bloodbornes," Kira pointed out. "Yeah," Dominic agreed. "That's the risk. You want to sit this one out? I'll understand." Kira thought about Maya, 25 years old, probably terrified, being used as a weapon by people who saw her as an asset instead of a person. Living the nightmare, Kira had barely escaped. "No," she said, "I'm going." The insertion point was 15 miles inside Cascade Falls territory. Ghost and Kira came in low and slow, using terrain to mask their approach. The rest of Cole's team held positions at the border, ready to provide support or extract if things went wrong. The intelligence from their insider contact had been detailed. Maya was being held at a military research facility disguised as a psychiatric hospital. Heavy security, rotating guard shifts, but also predictable patterns that a good reconnaissance team could exploit. Ghost moved like his call sign suggested, silent, invisible, reading the environment with the kind of spatial awareness that came from years of staying alive in hostile territory. Kira followed, using her empathic sensing to map guard positions by their emotional signatures. She'd gotten better at filtering the noise, focusing on specific individuals without getting overwhelmed by the collective. 8 guards on the perimeter, she whispered into her throat mic. 4 mobile patrols, 4 static positions, all alert but not alarmed. "Good," Cole responded through her earpiece. "Means they don't know you're there yet." They reached the facility's outer fence. Ghost produced wire cutters from his kit, working with practiced efficiency. The gap opened silently, just wide enough for them to slip through. Inside the compound, Kira's empathic sense reached ahead, searching for Maya. Found her in the central building, 3rd floor. Her emotional signature was chaos, fear and exhaustion and desperate resistance against something vast and hungry. "She's fighting it," Kira breathed. "Whatever they're making her do, she's trying to resist." "Can she hold?" Ghost asked. "I don't know." Kira felt the raw edges of Maya's consciousness. Maybe hours, maybe minutes. They moved faster. The facility's interior was exactly what the intelligence promised. Sterile corridors, keypads on every door, cameras at regular intervals. Ghost had the security bypass codes provided by their insider contact. Each door opened with a soft beep that felt too loud in the silence. 3rd floor. They emerged from the stairwell into a corridor lined with observation rooms. Through reinforced glass, Kira could see Maya. She was strapped to a medical bed, restraints on her wrists and ankles. Not to keep her from escaping, to keep her from hurting herself during the claiming process. Her eyes were closed, but Kira could see them moving rapidly beneath the lids. REM sleep, or something like it. Except Maya wasn't sleeping, she was claiming. Kira felt it through their shared bloodborne nature. Maya's consciousness spreading out like a net, touching every wolf within her range, wrapping around their pack bonds and pulling. 217 wolves already claimed, and counting. "We need to get her out now," Kira said. Ghost checked the door. "Biometric lock. We'll need the insider to open it." As if summoned, a doctor appeared at the end of the corridor. Late 40s, exhausted, carrying the weight of guilt in every line of his body. He matched the description their contact had provided. "Dr. Nathan Cross," he said quietly. "I'm the one who contacted Alpha King Thorne." Vivian's brother, Kira realized. Maya's father. Nathan nodded. "They took my daughter. Said they could help her control her abilities. Instead, they're killing her. Burning out her mind one forced claiming at a time." He pulled out a key card, swiped it at Maya's door. "You have maybe 10 minutes before the next guard rotation. After that, every alarm in this facility goes active." "What about you?" Ghost asked. "I'll face whatever consequences come," Nathan said. "Just save my daughter." The door opened. Maya's eyes snapped open, gold, brilliant and terrible. Her gaze locked on Kira, and her emotional presence slammed forward like a physical blow. Kira felt the claiming attempt. Maya's consciousness trying to wrap around her, pull her into the web of controlled wolves. It was instinctive, defensive, the desperate action of someone who'd been taught that claiming was the only way to stay safe. Kira didn't fight it, didn't resist or push back. Instead, she opened herself. Let Maya feel what she was, another Bloodborne. Someone who understood the hunger and the fear and the impossible weight of other people's souls. Maya's attempt faltered. Confusion rippled through her presence. You're like me, Maya whispered. Her voice was raw. But you're not claimed. How? Because I choose not to be, Kira said gently. And you can choose too. They're making me. Maya's eyes filled with tears. If I don't claim, they hurt me. Inject me with things that make the hunger worse until I can't think, can't resist. I know, Kira said. And we're going to get you out of here, but I need you to trust me. Why should I trust anyone? Because I'm standing here unclaimed, offering you a choice. Not demanding, not forcing, just asking. For a long moment, Maya stared at her. Then slowly, carefully, she nodded. Ghost moved forward, working on the restraints. Medical grade, designed to hold wolves, but he had the tools and the expertise. The restraints came free. Maya sat up, swaying. Kira felt the effort it took for her to maintain control. The claimed wolves pulling at her consciousness, demanding attention, their artificial loyalty a constant pressure. How many? Kira asked softly. 217, Maya said. I feel every single one of them. Their fear, their confusion. They know something's wrong, but they can't break free. We'll figure out how to release them, Kira promised. But first, we get you to safety. The exfil should have been clean. In and out before anyone realized she was gone. But they'd underestimated Cascade Falls Command's paranoia. Alarms began blaring when they were halfway down the stairs. Not the normal guard rotation. Full lockdown. Someone had been monitoring Maya more closely than the intelligence suggested. Ghost keyed his radio. Cole, we're blown. Extracting hot with package. Need immediate support. Copy that, Cole responded. Moving our position to rally point 2. You've got hostiles inbound from the west. Kira felt them. 20 soldiers, moving with tactical precision. Not regular guards. Special operations. The kind of troops you sent when failure wasn't acceptable. This way, Ghost said, changing their route. Not toward the main entrance, toward maintenance access on the building's east side. They moved fast, Maya between them. She was weak, drugged, barely able to walk. Ghost half carried her while Kira provided cover, using her empathic sense to track pursuit. The maintenance corridor was narrow, emergency lighting casting everything in red. Ghost kicked open the exit door and they emerged into chaos. Cascade Falls troops had surrounded the building, at least 40 soldiers in tactical formation, spotlights cutting through the darkness, voices shouting orders. And standing in front of them, megaphone in hand, was a man in officer's insignia. This is Colonel Richard Mason, Cascade Falls Territorial Command. You are in violation of sovereign territory. Release the asset and surrender immediately. Ghost's response was to pull Maya behind cover and assess their tactical situation. Surrounded, outnumbered, no clean exit. Kira, he said quietly, this is going to get loud. Wait, Kira said, let me try something. She stepped into the open, hands visible, no weapons. Colonel Mason, she called out. My name is Kira Ashford. I'm Northern Territory's liaison officer. I'm here because your asset, Maya Cross, is a person being tortured by your command. I'm offering her extraction to proper medical care. The asset is Cascade Falls property, Mason replied. Return her immediately. People aren't property, Kira said. And forcing a Bloodborne to claim against her will violate every treaty we have. We're developing strategic capabilities to protect our territory. You're creating a humanitarian crisis. Kira felt Maya's presence behind her, fragile and desperate. She's claimed 217 wolves who didn't consent. That's not defense. That's enslavement. A risk we're willing to take. Are your soldiers? Kira let her empathic sense reach out, felt the troops surrounding them, their uncertainty, their discomfort with orders that didn't sit right. She spoke louder, addressing all of them. The woman behind me is 25 years old. Her name is Maya Cross. Your command has been drugging her, torturing her, forcing her to claim wolves against her will and theirs. She's dying from it. Her mind is fracturing under the weight of souls she never wanted to carry. Some of the soldiers shifted, not much, but enough to notice. I'm Bloodborne too, Kira continued. I know what it feels like. The hunger, the temptation to claim everyone around you because it's easier than resisting. But I also know there's another way. Choice. Consent. Using these abilities to heal instead of harm. That's a nice speech, Mason said. But you're still in violation of our territory. Last chance. Surrender the asset. Kira looked at the soldiers, at their faces, young and old, uncertain and determined, felt their internal conflict. She could claim them right now, override their will, force them to stand down. It would be easy, would save Ghost and Maya. But it would also prove every fear about Bloodbornes was justified. She made a different choice. I'm not claiming anyone, she said. Not your soldiers, not you. I'm asking you to think about what you're doing, what you're supporting. Whether following orders is worth creating the kind of monster the last Bloodborne became. For 10 seconds nothing happened. Then one soldier lowered his weapon. A young woman, maybe 23. She stepped out of formation. I didn't sign up to torture prisoners, she said. Ma'am, with respect, I'm not doing this. One by one, other soldiers followed. Not all of them, maybe a third, but enough to break the containment formation. Mason's face went red with fury. This is mutiny. I will have you all court-martialed. Then you'll be court-martialing soldiers who refuse to participate in war crimes, someone said. Vivian Cross stepped out of the shadows, dressed in civilian clothes but carrying the authority of council position. She walked past the confused soldiers, past Mason's sputtering protests, straight to Kira. Well played, she said quietly. Knew you could do it without claiming them. You were here the whole time, Kira realized. Observing, Vivian confirmed. Nathan contacted me before he contacted Dominic. Asked me to provide political cover if this went wrong. She looked at Maya, her niece, broken and exhausted. Cascade Falls Command is about to have a very bad day. She turned to address the assembled soldiers and their fuming commander. This facility is now under council investigation. All personnel are ordered to stand down pending review of Project Animus. Colonel Mason, you're relieved of command effective immediately. You can't do that, Mason protested. I'm civilian council oversight with emergency authority. I absolutely can. Vivian's voice was steel. And when the council reviews the evidence of what you've done here, you'll be lucky if relief of command is the worst that happens. She gestured to Kira and Ghost. Get Maya out of here. Northern Territory Medical will provide care. The extraction after that was almost anticlimactic. Cole's team met them at the border with a medical transport. Doc immediately started working on Maya, treating the drug damage and exhaustion. Maya looked at Kira with eyes that were slowly fading from gold back to brown. The claimed wolves, she whispered. Can you help me release them? Kira took her hand. We'll figure it out together. You're not alone anymore. The debrief took 3 days. Council investigators descended on the Cascade Falls facility, documented everything. The forced claiming protocols, the drug regimens designed to break down resistance, the 217 wolves who'd been claimed without consent. Vivian Cross led the investigation personally. When she emerged, she looked older, tired in a way that went beyond lack of sleep. Project Animus is terminated, she announced in an emergency council session. All personnel involved face criminal charges. Cascade Falls territorial leadership is under review for gross violation of supernatural treaties. She paused. And we have 217 wolves who were claimed against their will. They need help. Specialized help from someone who understands what they're going through. All eyes turned to Kira. Northern Territory is prepared to provide that assistance, Dominic said. Under council oversight and with full cooperation from Cascade Falls Transition Government. It was the largest humanitarian operation Kira had ever been part of. She and Maya worked together, learning how to carefully, gently release claimed wolves without causing psychological damage. It wasn't fast. Each release required hours of careful work, helping the wolf remember who they were before the claiming, rebuilding their sense of autonomous identity. Elena coordinated the psychological support. Doc handled the medical side, treating the physical effects of extended claiming. Cole's team provided security, making sure no one tried to use the vulnerable wolves for political gain. And slowly, carefully, the 217 were freed. Not all of them wanted to return to their original packs. Some had been hurt before the claiming, were relieved to have an excuse to start fresh elsewhere. Kira helped them find new placements, territory transfers, independent status, whatever they chose. Choice, always choice. Maya watched Kira work with something like awe. "You make it look easy," she said one night after a particularly difficult release. "Giving them back their autonomy. I can barely control myself and you're healing 200 people." "It's not easy," Kira admitted. "Every release hurts. Feels like losing a limb. But it's necessary." She looked at Maya. "And you're stronger than you think. You held on for 3 weeks while they were torturing you. Most Bloodbornes would have broken in days." "I almost did," Maya whispered. "If you hadn't come. But we did. And now you're here, learning, growing, becoming who you choose to be instead of what they tried to make you." It took 6 weeks to release all 217 wolves. When the last one was freed, when the final connection was carefully severed, and the wolf walked away autonomous and whole, Kira felt something shift inside her. She'd proven something important, not just to the Council or to the territories, to herself. Bloodborne abilities didn't have to be weapons. They could be healing tools, ways to restore what was broken instead of breaking what was whole. The council meeting that followed was different from the trial session months ago. This time, Kira wasn't standing alone in the center accused of being a threat. She was seated at the table as a full participant. Maya beside her, Dominic on her other side, Vivian across, still sharp-eyed but no longer hostile. The agenda was simple: comprehensive reform of how territorial governments handled Bloodborne manifestations. Kira presented the proposal she and Dominic had worked on for weeks. First, mandatory notification to Council within 24 hours of any Bloodborne manifestation. No exceptions, no territorial secrecy. Second, immediate psychological and medical support. Treatment, not imprisonment. Help, not exploitation. Third, the creation of a Bloodborne support network. Myself and Maya as initial resources, others as they manifest and choose to participate. Fourth, absolute prohibition on forced claiming. Any territorial government that attempts to weaponize Bloodborne abilities faces immediate council intervention. And fifth, regular oversight, quarterly evaluations, civilian review committees, full transparency. It was a comprehensive framework designed to prevent another Project Animus, while also providing support for Bloodbornes who wanted to use their abilities responsibly. The debate was shorter than Kira expected. After seeing what Cascade Falls had done, after witnessing the humanitarian crisis of forced claiming, even the most conservative alphas recognized that doing nothing wasn't an option. The vote was 11-2 in favor. Only the most hardline traditionalists opposed, and even they acknowledged the reforms were necessary. Vivian closed the session with uncharacteristic warmth. 3 months ago, this council was debating whether to execute the first Bloodborne in 300 years. Today, we're establishing protections and support structures. That's progress. She looked at Kira. You've proven that what we feared most about Bloodbornes, the potential for tyranny and control, can be overcome through accountability and choice. That's a legacy worth building on. After the council session, Kira found herself on the fortress ramparts again, her thinking spot, where the elevation provided distance and clarity. Dominic joined her, settling into the comfortable silence they'd developed over the past months. "You did it," he said finally. "Changed 300 years of policy through competence and restraint." "We did it," Kira corrected. "I couldn't have survived without your support. Cole's team, Elena's therapy, all of it." "Still," Dominic said, "you're the one who walked into hostile situations unarmed, who talked down soldiers and freed claimed wolves, who proved Bloodbornes could be trusted." Kira leaned against the stone wall. "I'm terrified it won't last, that I'll make a mistake, lose control, become the thing everyone feared." "Then you'll have people who'll stop you," Dominic said. "Me, Cole, Maya, the Oversight Committee. That's the difference between you and the last Bloodborne. You've built accountability instead of isolation." He was quiet for a moment. "Catherine used to tell me that leadership wasn't about being perfect. It was about being willing to be wrong and learn from it. I didn't understand what she meant until I met you." Kira turned to look at him. "How so?" "Because you're the first person I've met who's as afraid of their own power as I am of mine, who understands that strength without restraint is just tyranny with better marketing." His silver eyes met hers. "I told you before that you reminded me there's a difference between what we can do and who we are. I meant it. And I'm grateful every day that you choose to use your abilities to heal instead of harm." Kira felt something warm expand in her chest. Not the artificial pull of a mate bond. Something better. Something chosen. "I choose you too," she said softly. "As a partner. As someone who understands the weight. As—" she hesitated. "Maybe more than that if you're willing." Dominic smiled, small and genuine and free of the burden he usually carried. "I'm willing," he said, terrified but willing. They stood together in the fading light, two people who'd found each other through impossible circumstances and chosen to build something real from the wreckage of what they'd lost. 1 year later, Kira stood in the Northern Territory Command Center reviewing case files. The past 12 months had been intense. She'd resolved 43 pack disputes, helped integrate the Void Walkers who'd chosen territorial association, worked with Maya to establish the Bloodborne support network, trained with Cole's team until she could operate as a full tactical asset instead of just a specialist, and through it all, she'd maintained her relationship with Dominic. Not publicly. That would have created political complications neither of them wanted. But privately, in the quiet moments between crises, they'd built something solid. Partnership first. Respect and trust earned through shared challenges. And underneath it, growing steadily stronger, something that felt like love. Not the desperate, consuming kind. The steady, reliable kind. The kind that showed up in small gestures. In him making sure she ate during long cases. In her helping him process the weight of command decisions, in conversations that lasted until dawn about everything and nothing. It wasn't perfect, they argued, disagreed on tactics and strategy, challenged each other's assumptions, but it was real. And after everything Kira had survived, real was more valuable than perfect. Cole found her reviewing files in the early morning hours. "Can't sleep?" he asked, settling into a chair across from her desk. "Too much to do," Kira said. 3 new cases came in overnight. Pack boundary dispute in the Western Territory, PTSD veteran in crisis, and a possible Bloodborne manifestation in Cascade Falls. "Another one?" Cole frowned. "That's the 3rd this year. Bloodborne genetics are expressing more frequently," Kira said. "Elena thinks it's evolutionary response to territorial stress. More crises mean more people manifesting abilities to handle them." She closed the file she'd been reading. The Cascade Falls case is a teenager, 15 years old, terrified. Her parents contacted us directly instead of going through territorial channels. "Smart parents," Cole observed. "After Project Animus, people don't trust local governments to handle it right. Maya's going to handle the initial contact," Kira said. "She's better with the newly manifested, less intimidating. And you? I've got the Western boundary dispute. 2 packs arguing over hunting territory. Standard negotiation." Cole was quiet for a moment. "You know you don't have to take every case. You've got Maya now, other support resources. You could delegate." "I could," Kira agreed. "But these people requested me specifically. They trust that I'll be fair. That matters." "Just don't burn yourself out," Cole said. "We need you functional long-term, not heroic short-term." It was the kind of practical wisdom that made him an excellent second-in-command. "I'll be careful," Kira promised. "Besides, I've got a whole team watching my back now." "Damn right you do," Cole said. "Speaking of which, Ghost wanted to know if you're still up for hand-to-hand training this afternoon." Kira groaned. "He's trying to kill me." "He's trying to make sure you can handle yourself if negotiations go physical," Cole corrected. "There's a difference." "Fine," Kira said. "But if I'm too sore to function tomorrow, I'm blaming you." Cole grinned, noted and accepted. The Western boundary dispute took 3 days to resolve. 2 packs, both with legitimate claims to hunting territory, both with proud histories and stubborn leaders, both convinced the other was being unreasonable. Kira approached it the way she approached all negotiations now. Listen first. Understand what they actually needed versus what they thought they wanted. Find the common ground buried under layers of territorial pride. The actual issue wasn't the hunting territory. It was that both packs were growing, needed more resources, and didn't trust each other enough to cooperate. So Kira proposed something new: shared territory with clear protocols for scheduling and resource management. Each pack got access to the disputed land, but on a rotation that prevented conflict. It took 2 days of negotiation to hammer out the details: who hunted when, how they'd communicate schedules, what happened if someone violated the agreement. But by the 3rd day, both alphas were shaking hands, not friends, but no longer enemies, just neighbors with a functional system for coexistence. Kira filed her report with satisfaction. Another crisis prevented, another war avoided. That evening, Dominic found her in her quarters. She'd claimed space in the command wing now, closer to the tactical operations center. Room full of case files and reference materials and the accumulated evidence of a year's worth of work. "Successful negotiation?" he asked, settling into the chair she kept specifically for his visits. "Successful enough," Kira said. "They're not going to war over deer migration patterns." "Progress," Dominic said. Then more seriously, "I have something to discuss with you." Kira set down the file she'd been reading. "Your tone suggests it's complicated. When is it not?" Dominic pulled out a tablet. "The Council is proposing to formalize your position. Create an official title, Bloodborne Liaison with full territorial authority." "That sounds like it comes with strings attached," Kira said carefully. "Political ones, yes. You'd be an official Council resource instead of Northern Territory specific. Would require you to operate across all territories, not just ours. More oversight, more visibility, more pressure." He met her eyes. "It would also give you the authority to intervene in situations before they become crises. Formal standing to challenge territorial governments that are mishandling Bloodborne cases. Real power to make structural changes. What do you think I should do?" Dominic was quiet for a moment. "I think you should choose whatever lets you sleep at night. If you want to stay here, keep working on a smaller scale, I'll support that. If you want to take the Council position, expand your impact, I'll support that too." "And us?" Kira asked. "If I'm working across all territories?" "We adapt," Dominic said simply. "Make it work. I've waited 30 years to find someone who understands the weight of command. I'm not letting geography get in the way." Kira felt the warmth of that statement settle in her chest. "I need to think about it," she said. "Take your time. The Council's not pushing for immediate answer." He stood to leave, then paused. "Whatever you decide, you should know something. You've changed this territory. Changed me. Proved that people with impossible abilities can choose to use them responsibly. That's not nothing. It's everything," Kira corrected softly. After he left, she sat with the decision. Bigger role meant bigger impact, but also bigger risks. More chances to fail. More ways for things to go wrong. She thought about the teenager in Cascade Falls, terrified of her manifestation. About the claimed wolves she'd helped free. About all the future Bloodbornes who would need someone to show them there was a path between weaponization and execution. She thought about her father, still running his unbound community. About Marcus, disgraced and awaiting trial. About Rhea and the Voidwalkers building their alternative society. About all the different ways people tried to survive in systems that weren't designed for them. And she realized that she'd been given something precious. A chance to change those systems, to make them work for people instead of against them. The choice was obvious, terrifying but obvious. The acceptance ceremony happened 2 weeks later. Not in the Council chamber, on neutral ground. A field that had once been a battlefield, now converted to a memorial park. Representatives from all 13 territories present. Kira wore formal attire, not a uniform, something between military and civilian that reflected her unique position. Vivian Cross conducted the ceremony with her typical efficiency. "By unanimous vote of the Territorial Council, we hereby establish the position of Bloodborne Liaison, a role dedicated to the support, oversight, and ethical deployment of Bloodborne abilities across all territories." She turned to Kira. "Kira Ashford, You are hereby appointed to this position with full authority to intervene in Bloodborne cases, negotiate territorial disputes, and ensure that no wolf with these abilities is exploited or weaponized. Kira accepted the formal documents, felt the weight of the responsibility settle over her like a mantle. Do you accept this position and its obligations? I do, Kira said clearly. Then let it be recorded. There was applause, polite and formal, but genuine. After the ceremony, people approached to congratulate her. Alphas who'd voted for her execution months ago. Civilian representatives who'd been skeptical. Military commanders who'd seen her work and been impressed. Maya hugged her tightly. You did it. Made them see what we could be instead of what they feared. We did it, Kira corrected. Couldn't have freed those claimed wolves without you. Cole's team presented her with a gift. Custom tactical vest with integrated communication systems and emergency equipment, practical and thoughtful, exactly what she'd expect from them. For the next impossible mission, Hammer said with a grin. There's always a next one, Kira agreed. Dominic waited until the crowd had dispersed before approaching. In public, they maintained professional distance. But his eyes carried warmth that was just for her. Congratulations, Liaison Ashford, he said formally. Thank you, Alpha King Thorne, she replied with equal formality. Then quieter, he added, Dinner tonight, my quarters? I'll be there, she promised. That night, in the privacy of his quarters, they dropped the formality. Dominic cooked, as he always did when they had time. Nothing fancy, just the kind of simple meal that came from years of feeding himself between command decisions. They ate in comfortable silence, then moved to the balcony overlooking the territory. The mountains dark against the stars, the fortress lights below. Are you afraid, Dominic asked, of the new position? Terrified, Kira admitted. Bigger scope means bigger failures if I mess up. You won't, Dominic said. You don't know that. No, he agreed. But I know you. Know that you'll try with everything you have, ask for help when you need it, learn from mistakes instead of hiding from them. He took her hand. And I know you're not alone. You've got Maya, Cole's team, Elena, the whole support network you've built. I've got you, Kira added. Always, Dominic said, partnership equals, no matter how much territory separates us. They stood together in the darkness. Two people who'd found each other through impossible circumstances and built something that would last. The emergency alert came at 0200 hours. Kira was asleep in her quarters when the communication panel lit up. Not a drill. Real-world crisis. Cross-border conflict with potential for Bloodborne involvement. She was dressed and moving within minutes. Found Dominic already in the Tactical Operations Center. Cole coordinating with border outposts. What do we have? Kira asked, slipping into tactical mode as easily as breathing now. Dominic pulled up satellite imagery. Cross-border incident. 2 territories disputing resource rights. Reports of possible Bloodborne manifestation on both sides. Situation escalating toward armed conflict. He looked at her. Council is requesting your immediate intervention. Full authority to negotiate whatever resolution prevents war. When do I leave? 30 minutes, Cole said. Ghost and Hammer are prepping transport. Doc's loading medical supplies. Bears on equipment manifest. Full team deployment, Kira observed. This one's big, Dominic said. Get it wrong and we're looking at full territorial war. Get it right and you prove the Bloodborne liaison position works. No pressure then, Kira said dryly. Dominic's expression softened slightly. You've done this before. Multiple times. This is just bigger scale. Yeah, Kira agreed, just bigger. She gathered her gear. The tactical vest from Cole's team, medical kit, communication equipment, all the tools of her trade. Elena found her before she left, handed her a small device. Biometric monitor, the psychologist explained. Tracks your stress levels, empathic load. If you're getting overwhelmed, it alerts me and I can talk you through grounding exercises remotely. Thank you, Kira said, attaching it to her vest. Maya appeared next, looking nervous. I should come with you. 2 Bloodbornes working together. Not this time, Kira said gently. I need you here. There's a newly manifested kid in Eastern Territory who needs support. You're better with the scared teenagers than I am. Maya nodded, accepting the reasoning if not liking it. The team assembled on the landing pad, Ghost and Hammer doing final equipment checks, Bear loading supplies with mechanical efficiency. Doc reviewing medical protocols. Cole approached last, handed her a small tablet. "Mission brief," he said. "Everything we know about the situation. Not much, but it's a starting point." Kira scanned the information. 2 territories, historical grievances, resource disputes, and buried in the intelligence, mentions of possible bloodborne activity on both sides. "This could get complicated," she observed. "When is it not?" Cole replied. Then more seriously, "Bring everyone home safe, including yourself." "That's the plan." Dominic watched from the command center observation deck. Kira felt his presence through their connection. Not empathic claiming, just the awareness that came from months of partnership and growing love. She looked up, met his eyes across the distance. He nodded once, trust and confidence in everything they didn't say in front of the team. Kira boarded the helicopter. The rotors spun up, and within moments they were airborne, heading toward the next crisis. Inside the helicopter, surrounded by Cole's team, Kira reviewed the mission brief one more time. Then she closed the tablet and looked at each team member. Ghost, calm and focused. Hammer, ready for whatever came. Bear, solid and dependable. Doc, prepared to keep everyone alive. This was her team, her people, the ones who'd proven through shared danger that they'd stand with her no matter what. "Whatever we're flying into," Kira said, "we handle it the way we always do. Tactical excellence, moral clarity. No one gets claimed who doesn't choose it." "Understood," Ghost said quietly. The others nodded agreement. The helicopter flew through the darkness toward whatever awaited, and Kira felt something she'd never expected to feel after being rejected by her mate, discharged from the military, and told she was a monster. She felt ready, not because she had all the answers, not because success was guaranteed, but because she'd proven to herself over the past year that bloodborne abilities didn't have to mean tyranny, that power could be wielded with restraint, that the weight of other people's souls could be carried without losing your own. She'd gone from wolfless reject to dangerous weapon to someone the Council trusted to prevent wars. And along the way, she'd found family in Cole's team, purpose in helping others, love with someone who understood the burden of command. She'd found herself. The helicopter banked toward the crisis zone. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting everything in shades of gold and crimson. Kira Ashford, Bloodborne liaison, first of her kind in 300 years, flew toward the next impossible mission. And she flew toward it unafraid, not because the danger wasn't real, but because she'd learned something crucial in the year since her manifestation. Fear was just another weight to carry, and she'd gotten very good at carrying weight. The helicopter descended toward whatever awaited. New challenges, new threats, new chances to prove that choosing competence over fear, accountability over power, and partnership over isolation could change the world. One crisis at a time, one choice at a time. One claimed wolf freed, one negotiation completed, one war prevented. Until the day came when Bloodbornes weren't feared as monsters, but trusted as healers. That day wasn't here yet, might not come for years or decades, but Kira would keep working toward it. Because that's what you did when you'd been given impossible abilities and decided to use them for something other than conquest. You showed up, you did the work, you made the hard choices, and you hoped it was enough. The helicopter touched down in disputed territory. Kira and her team disembarked into a situation that would test everything she'd learned. But that was a story for another crisis, another negotiation, another impossible mission. For now she was here, ready, unafraid, exactly where she chose to be.